But I have seen it, how it eats people alive from the inside. This anxiety over the house of cards that they have built as an identity,
Yes.
potentially falling apart when they look the other way. And it happens and it's horrible. But we talk a lot about queerness because, even if we had explored queerness when we were younger in Guatemala, it was not until we were here that we understood what it meant, and that this conversation about queerness is, we always talk about queerness in the sense of what the queer community needs, what the queer community suffers, what the queer community struggles. And what we started saying was like, you know what? Why don't we talk about what the queer community has to share with the rest of the world, what we can learn from queerness? And for us, it was that joy in being whoever you were, which is something that people understand, sometimes kind of weaponized, if you will. But at the end of the day, it eats you alive if you don't do it. So you might as well. And there's a way, and there's, of course, the constraints of living in organized society and so on and so forth. Like, sure, this is not about like, go naked if you feel like going naked. But there's a fundamental truth that it requires so much energy. Like, I can just think of how much energy you spend trying to disguise yourself and how much more productive that energy could be.
Yes. Welcome. I'm Jordan Harcourt-Hughes, and this is Sacred Stories of the Spirit. In this episode, I speak with Louis and Hans, the creative duo behind the Sunday Afternoon Project. From building a joyful bakery brand in Guatemala to losing it all when they refused to tone it down, Louis and Hans share how storytelling became their compass and a way to reclaim their voices and also to show the way forward for others. This is a conversation about the energy it takes to belong, the creativity that returns when we live authentically, and the quiet courage of becoming visible. I hope you enjoy the episode. Well, Louis and Hans, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you here for a conversation.
Thank you so much for having us on, Jordan. Really nice meeting you.
Now, tell me about the Sunday Afternoon Project. How did it start? What is it? And what does it mean to you personally?
Do you want the long story or the short story?
Maybe in between.
I would say that, Hans, if you want, I'll start just telling the story, how we got here, and then you can continue. So we are a married couple. We're both from Guatemala. And the reason why we moved was because we couldn't get married legally in Guatemala. And back in 2018, we took a road trip through the coast in California. We drove from San Diego all the way through San Francisco. And we kept seeing all these gay parents. And I think that we were the only ones who were going crazy and noticing them. And it was by the time that we got to San Francisco, we were already engaged, and we were like, wow, we haven't even thought about if we want to have kids. How is our wedding day going to be? Because back then we were going to live in Guatemala, so we were going to do a quote unquote symbolic wedding, I guess. And having kids was not at the table. So we stopped talking about like, since we were like 19, I guess, both of us. And when we were like, okay, we haven't talked about it because we don't have that chip anymore and it's not for us. And we felt that that was so unfair. And that's how we decided to move here to the United States. We landed in Austin, Texas, and we started, we had a bakery back in Guatemala, and we started doing farmers markets here with the bakery. And in a space of 18 months, we grew the business from a farmer's market to $5.1 million in sales. It was like right the pandemic hit, and we went viral, and it was a whole journey. And along the way, we got an investor, and sadly, after he invested, he sat us down and he told us that the brand was too gay and that we needed to tone it down and that no one cared about our story and we needed to stop telling our story because everything that everybody cared for was only the flavor of the cookies. And we said no, and we ended up getting sued and we lost the business.
Wow, gosh.
And Hans, you want to take over from there on?
Yeah, so to keep it short, what I wish that we had the words to say that at that time. But what the cookie brand used to say was, the food we share tells the story of who we are, and by openly and fearlessly sharing our story, we create space for others to share theirs. And that was the product of our journey.
Yeah, beautiful.
I wish we had been as eloquent at that point, because it's going to be 2 years in the next week or so. But basically what we decided to do, even if we didn't have words for it, was to bury the body, but carry on the legacy, I guess. So we just removed cookies. It was not about cookies. It was not about food. And some people actually told us, that's great that you got rid of the cookies. Now, finally, you can do what you're trying to do. because they were kind of getting in the way. And I guess we kind of felt that. We didn't see it. We kind of felt that we were so tired and so burned out by the whole situation. But so it became the things we share with the world tell the story of who we are. And by openly and fearlessly sharing our stories, we create space for others to share theirs. And
Oh,
you
I
know
love
how
it.
in marketing, everything is about storytelling, and storytelling has become one of those buzzwords that has lost its meaning. It's just like impact. Everyone talks about impact, but no one
Yeah.
qualifies impact. I hate it
Yeah.
because it doesn't mean anything if you don't give a qualification to it. Well, the same with stories. And people think that, oh, storytelling is about telling my story, and they start telling when I was a baby. And that is not it. It is the way we see it as you share your story to open the door for others, to be a role model, to give, but it's not that stories, the way we see it, are shown, not just told. And I
Wow.
think that is the mistake that many people make. That is just your words, and it is not. It's how you conduct yourself. So when we think about those gay couples with children who are just living their lives openly, fearlessly, if you will, I mean, they were in California, a place that very much welcomed them, of course. But that was them telling their story. That was them saying, this is who I am. And this is who you could be. You could be too. They didn't say, oh, here come Hans and Luis. We're going to be role models for them. They were just
Yeah.
living. And that is living by example, I guess. Like just living openly. That's what opened the door for us. Just the fact that we kept seeing them. It was like, wait a minute, what am I missing? How is it possible that we are so traumatized, if you will, that we hadn't even considered that we could, number one, properly get married as opposed to getting a trust and a living will and a part of attorney and whatever we're going to do, and then have a family. And the question was not whether we wanted a family or not. The question was, I want that to be a choice that I make.
Yes.
So that led us down to this discovery of what we do the Sunday afternoon, what the Sunday Afternoon Project does is about self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is this ability to identify opportunities and match them with your own skills and your resources.
Love it.
This is where it gets interesting because people, for instance, we all need this. We all need this to advance. We need to identify both things. So otherwise, we're spinning wheels all the time, right? But people who are in the lowest quintile of economy of income, so in the lowest quintile of income, 80% of them never leave. And one of the key reasons why they don't leave is because we have, as a society, told them, don't even bother because you are not going to leave. Don't even bother
Don't
trying.
even try. Yeah.
Don't even try
It's
knocking at
sad.
the door. And many of them, and this is not to say that it's just about belief. Of course, there are many systemic issues and things that need to be solved. But one key difference between two people under the same set of circumstances is whether they have this ability. And this ability, what determines this ability in great part is the access to role models.
Mhm.
If a person sees someone overcome their circumstances, if there's like a neighbor,
Yes.
an uncle, a friend who overcame their circumstances, they are a lot more likely to overcome them themselves. So for a kid who leaves a rough neighborhood, a situation of poverty, a lack of education, and moves over, he becomes a trailblazer. But that is true for gay people, women, Black people, Latinos, you name it. Any type of person who find themselves marginalized. And I'll give you an example that has nothing to do whatsoever with what we would typically call like diversity. Now we talk a lot about mental health. And the fact that we talk a lot about mental health has made it so that when someone finds themselves in a difficult situation with that, they see it all around them. They see it discussed on TV. They see that we talk about it, that we normalize it. We're not talking. I remember when in the 90s when Prozac first came out, we would talk about happy pills. And that is absolutely not what mental health is. But the fact that everyone started taking the quote unquote happy pills and talking about how good they were for them made a whole generation who is now looking for mental health. That we are so aware of mental health in a way that our generation was not. So this has nothing to do with minorities. But the point is, we all need it. No matter what our circumstances are, we all benefit from that. So the other side of the coin of telling people you're not gonna leave because as a society we do that is the people who do live, who do make it to the other side, to them we tell, as a society, well, you're here, but don't you get too comfortable because we know you're not one of us. And don't rock the boat because the second that we notice that you're rocking the boat, we're gonna outer you.
We force them
And
to
we
blend in a way.
yeah, so we force like the condition to advancement is code switching in many cases. And this again happens to women, happens to people with learning disabilities, happens to Black people, to LGBTQ people, and so on and so forth. So there's two ugly sides of that coin, but a lot of it is, again, the lack of role models. But when people get themselves in a situation where they code switch, they are forfeiting their, what we see as a duty to function as role models. If I start denying my identity, then I'm telling the world that that is an okay way to live, because I am privileged enough that I get to be in public. So it's like, okay, the way to be is like hiding, pretending that you're something you're not. And again, we keep doing this to everyone. So when we talk about storytelling, that is what we mean.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you.
That was a long answer.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for
I
coming to
know.
my TED Talk.
Okay.
Well, I hope you're enjoying the second series of Sacred Stories of the Spirit. This season, conversations traverse change, identity, and belonging, and they ask us how to live with more integrity, more courage, and more connection, both to ourselves and each other. Together, we're looking at what it means to live story as practice, to let story guide our healing, our growth, and our understanding of what's possible in the day-to-day. Stay with us as we journey through the landscapes of courage, authenticity, and transformation. So, in some of your material, you've described storytelling as your compass. So, can you each of you share a moment where story helped you find your own way? I mean, I think you've given a lovely example of the one that you've had together in coming to the US. But was there anything individually that where story has actually also allowed you to grapple with something in a different way?
For me, you know that I would like to tell you the opposite. A lack of a story that would have been very
Yes.
helpful for me. And I go back to when I was a little kid, and I'm going to turn 45 in August. And back in
A
the
young
days when
45.
yes, exactly.
Awesome.
No, but back in the days, you know what, when you start noticing that you're different than the other kids, is it doesn't have to be a sexual attraction, but I knew that I was leaning into boys, not into girls. But was I was growing up, the word gay didn't exist. It was the word homosexual.
Or
And
worse.
homosexual was the same as saying a pervert, a sexual addict. It was very, you're going to hell. It was very negative, always. And I went to an all boys Catholic school, and I was told every day that if you are a boy and you like boys, you're a homosexual and you're going to hell. So for me growing up, it was really hard because in my head, I was always thinking, I believe I'm a good person, but I am going to turn into this monster. And I cannot tell you how many times I woke up praying to be fixed, to like girls. Like, how hard could it be? Because I didn't want to turn into this monster. And I was so afraid. I was always thinking, when is it going to be that day that I'm going to wake up and I'm going to turn into this thing? So not having a role model, not having stories around me of gay people, successful gay people that have families, that have businesses, that they have a professional, successful life, that for me, the lack of all of that really made it really hard. So that's why today, with the Sunday Afternoon Project, for me, it's so important to get as many stories as we can out there to start normalizing whatever it is that we are not normalizing yet. So that's a little bit of like a different answer to what you were asking, but I think that that's for me, if I had those stories in my life,
Yeah.
that would have changed my whole life, I think.
Yeah, no, perfect answer. Hans, how about you?
Well, I have a very similar experience to that, I guess. We're raised in very similar circumstances. But to me, one of the things that was really a challenge was the mental health part. Because I was raised in the type of household and the type of parents who thought that mental health, like therapy, medication, whatever it was, that's for people who are weak. And that was something solvable and that it was just you being lazy. And I mean, I didn't buy into that. And when I really found myself in a very difficult mental health situation, with a very bad depression, I think we let it go. I mean, Luis and I, because Luis was really supporting me to that time, we let it get so bad because I finally said, okay, it's time for the big guns. And it's good that now that I'm on the other side of it, it would have been so much more manageable from the get-go. How we say, well, okay, this is a normal part of life. This is something that
Yeah.
sometimes happens, and it is not that different from getting high blood pressure or whatever. But I didn't think like that. I didn't see it like that. I saw like, oh, there's something wrong with me. And even further, because I was diagnosed with ADD, was like, a proper diagnosis. Sometimes like people use that use lately. And I was like, wow, my life could have been so different had we talked about this when I was in school and realized that this lack of attentiveness, this struggle to focus, this distraction was a manifestation of ADD, and also in a way that ADD was what allowed a lot of my creativity to flourish. So it's not like to think about it as something that's wrong with you, it's something that you function differently, I would say,
Yes.
and need support, need a different environment. I don't know, my life would be so different, and it's not worthwhile to spend time looking how. But I would say, wow, this was so much lost time that we hadn't lost.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. What do you think about storytelling as spiritual and emotional practice? Is it something that you think we all need, we all do, or we're kind of still lacking in process?
Oh, we don't. Like, we are like it. I think that there's so much pressure to conform and so
Yes.
much pressure to pretend to look a certain way, to act a
Yes.
certain way, to have certain things. And I'm not particularly spiritual, but, and I think Luis is the same, that we got over those things very young for whatever reason. I think that one of the wonders of being queer is that you have to really look at yourself from very early. It's a survival thing. It's
Yes.
not
Yes.
like a middle life crisis kind of situation. It's like this, I need to figure this out. Or so it helps you with that. So I think we overcame it very early. But I have seen it how it eats people alive from the inside. This anxiety over the house of cards that they have built as an identity,
Yes.
potentially falling apart when they look the other way. And it happens and it's horrible. But more than anything, because same, and we talk a lot about queerness because, even if we had explored queerness when we were younger in Guatemala and everything, it was not until we were here that we understood what it meant, and that this conversation about queerness is, we always talk about queerness in the sense of what the queer community needs, what the queer community suffers, what the queer community struggles. And what we started saying was like, you know what? Why don't we talk about what the queer community has to share with the rest of the world, what we can
Yeah.
learn from queerness? And for us, it was that joy in being whoever you were, which is something that people understand, sometimes kind of weaponized, if you will. But at the end of the day, it eats you alive if you don't do it. So you might as well. And there's a way, and there's, of course, the constraints of living in organized society and so on and so forth. Like, sure, this is not about like go naked if you feel like going naked. But there's a fundamental truth that it requires so much energy. Like, I can just think of how much energy you spend trying to disguise yourself and how much more
Yes.
productive that energy could be.
Yes. Yes.
You know that for me, that part is like when we started, because I hate that term, but I guess it is what it is. But I came out of the closet when I was 30 years old. And in a way, you start reconnecting with yourself after you do. And what it's beautiful, I would say, of the process is that forces you to start reconnecting with your inner child in a way, because you forgot about it for so long,
Yeah.
trying it, like how Hans is saying, like trying to code switch or be less loud, or I don't know, trying to disappear, I guess.
Yeah.
And when you are comfortable with yourself, and that's what I love about the queer community. That's why the queer community is also so joyful, so colorful. Like you see glitter, you see feathers, and the music. It's very childlike because in a way
Yes.
we didn't have a childhood where and when we realized it and when we started seeing it that way, it was so beautiful to see it like developing in front of our eyes. And that's one of the things that what put us on the map with the cookie bread that we had. Because back in Guatemala, when we had it, we always said it was always like very colorful, super pink. Like it was very, very joyful, I would say. But there was something missing. We always said there's something missing here. And when we moved to Austin and we just felt safe here for the first time, like being ourselves, it was even very, very weird getting used to call each other, oh, he's my husband. Like just that, like it was super hard, but
Yeah.
we got used to it. But once you felt comfortable, like we both felt comfortable, out of the blue, I remember like 8 months after or a year after we had the business here, one of our employees in any harm way, he was like just mentioning, guys, have you seen that your brand is very gay? And we were like, what do you mean it's very gay? And we left it there, and he couldn't explain it, but he was like, okay, the brand is very gay. And after a few days of thinking, it's like, wow, we have a disco ball in the kitchen, we have a dinosaur in a tutu as a mascot. Instead of packing peanuts, we put in colorful pom-poms. Of course, it's like joyful, but it's just us. The brand is us. We were not afraid of expressing ourselves anymore, and we were not holding into, oh, this is gonna come across as too childish or too gay or too anything. It's like, you know what? If you don't like it, if it's too much for you, then it's not for you, and that's
Yeah,
fine.
that's which is something super tempting with the storytelling part, and we still suffer from it. I want like
Yeah.
all of this is what we have considered, which is not to say that we're so good at this that we never falter, because it happens like when you're marketing your business, and it's tricky because all of this is very hard to convey. Like you have to sit down with people and explain to them what you're trying to do. You are like, oh yeah, but we should make it less. We're having a workshop. They asked for a workshop for a family office thing, and our first instinct was, oh, but we should tone it down because I don't think this audience is going to appreciate how colorful everything that we do
And
is.
it was
Because one
something
of the
ridiculous. It was bubbles. We were discussing about if we should have bubbles or
no,
not.
but
That
we
it got to that point.
start like bubbles are kind of our thing because
Yeah.
you cannot. I cannot tell you how much they open people up. Like you give them a little thing of bubbles, and at first, like
Yeah.
they're like, this person is crazy. And once you
They
actually get them to
smile.
blow the bubbles, you can see how like every barrier
Yeah.
just falls down. But we were like, I don't think that this audience is gonna care for this. Maybe we should tone it down. The temptation is there to say we should be for everyone. Everyone should like us. Everyone, and that's the failure of storytelling. Like when you see all this content that doesn't have a point of view, is because this person is so concerned that the story that they're telling is for everyone that ends up being for no one. Because no one is going to be offended by, for me, it's the color gray, and you see the wall
It's
behind me, I hate
plain.
it. It's gray, vanilla, like boring. No one is going to be offended. No one has ever said, oh, vanilla ice cream is disgusting. But I don't think anyone has ever been excited, wow, vanilla ice cream is changing my life.
Yeah,
So
vanilla
same,
ice cream is fun when you start adding all the toppings, like the
it's fine.
sprinkles, like
It's
then it gets
fine.
exciting.
Yeah. So one thing that we really, I remember that this conversation was about 3 months ago.
Yeah.
And you were very aware, I remember, and it was me at that point because we switched. It's funny because as a couple, sometimes it's one who's having a crisis and the other one is keeping it together, and we switched. We
Thank
thankfully
God.
have
Thank God
very
we
rarely found
always, yeah.
ourselves both in a state of crisis. But we were like, I was like, nope. If they don't like it, then they can find someone else because we're not a good fit. And it's not even about that. Forget about it being a stance. It's not gonna be a good fit. They're not gonna get their money's worth. They're not gonna enjoy it. It's not gonna do what they wanted to do. So if you want to think about it in terms of transparency, you're telling it like it is. And if they don't like it, they will find it out, but not in a confrontative manner, just in a manner like, well, they don't like it.
Yeah.
This is not for them.
I would say that the key of storytelling is that you need to keep it authentic because it really shows people.
You can see
People
from a mile
they
away.
can see it. Yeah, so it has to be like Hans is saying. It doesn't have to be controversial or offensive or whatever it is. It has to be authentic, and that's it.
Yeah, you have to be very, very careful to do not overcorrect to the point that you are kind of looking to
Yeah.
offend or to provoke people, which is kind of like the other extreme. And it does happen.
Sometimes
Like
it's
people,
fun. Sometimes it's fun to
sometimes you
provoke.
kind of want to poke. Yeah, sometimes you do want to poke the beehive, but in
Yeah.
general, like one thing was something that we tell people because we're always like, we tell them, we want you to have the provocative conversations, but they confuse provocative with offensive. And those
Yeah.
are two very different things. Like offensive is when you really overcorrect and you go on the other side. But provocative is like a lot of asking questions. And this is how we think about stories, about content, about whatever it is that you're doing. Like you invite questions. One of the things that we talk about a lot is it's a whole process. We call it story sharing, which is different than storytelling because we don't tell stories. Telling stories is like, for me, one-sided.
Yes.
And that is not correct. I mean, there's a point where that needs to happen. Then when you write a novel, then it's out.
Yeah.
There's no editor, there's no nothing. Like then it's out and there's a one-way dialogue by necessity. It's in stages and you need to start having this, like, allowing other people in. And this says through, like, how we tell entrepreneurs that they need to tell a story. We tell nonprofits that they need to tell a story. Editors need to tell a story. Your family need to have a story, which is true. But we kind of struggle with just putting out our vision of it without accounting for the other part, which again, as everything, there's a middle ground between getting feedback and pandering. And you also want to be careful about that. But in general, you want to say, hey, how is this being taken? It's not about like, what do you think I should change about myself? It is, how is that I am coming across? Is it coming across in a way that is productive to me? Or is my message coming across in the way that I want? Not because they don't like it, or whether they like it or not, is whether they am communicating properly. And those are two different. You don't want it to be like, I'm gonna make it so everyone loves me, because that's not even gonna happen anyway. So don't waste your time. That is my lesson. The big lesson that we found, like, don't waste your time. Not everyone's gonna like you, so you might as well stop trying.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a good story should actually leave you with a lot of questions.
More
Like
questions
that's
than
a good
answers.
story. Yeah.
Yeah,
That for us
nice.
is the key. Like if you leave they tell you a story and you're leaving with more questions, that's a great story.
If you're new to Sacred Stories of the Spirit, you might like to go back and listen to Series 1 of the podcast, where the journey began. In this first series, we explore the transformative power of story and how the act of sharing, reflecting, and reframing our experiences can help us make sense of who we are. So if you haven't already, I invite you to take a listen, and hopefully you'll find something in each episode that's timeless, whether it's an insight, a question, or just a moment of recognition and reflection. Enjoy. I want to actually just circle back to something that you said, which I think is super interesting, which was this idea of anxiety over the house of cards of identity, so that people exist with this existential anxiety. And I think that this is a massive conundrum, and I think it's in contradiction with this idea of storytelling. But how do you guys think that we help people dismantle that house of cards, and how can we guide people out of that sense of needing to?
I think it's a matter of leading by example, like putting it out there. You see it, for instance, like it's very going back to the example about queerness, for instance. It took how many years for us to see gay people in mainstream roles on TV? Watch how long it took for it to be normal. How long it took for for instance, we talk about, say, women directors in movies who are in front of massive budgets and positions. How long has it taken? And everyone that shows up and does the job and doesn't give up contributes just a little bit. So
Yeah.
to give you an example that maybe is more clear. For a whole generation of children in America, being Black and being the president are not mutually exclusive. Whereas before Obama, we're like, what?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's how it takes forever.
Yeah.
It's like it's
That's
very
the thing
marginal
that I
change.
think that's the key, that you need to understand that it takes forever. But
And it's an
even that
aggregate.
it takes forever, if you are on the side that you can move the needle just a little bit, you need to do it.
Yeah, because it's an aggregate. It's not like, oh, Barack Obama, his force of will and his talent became the first Black candidate. No, there's a whole story, a very big story that traces back years and years and years and years. But think of Martin Luther King Jr. So it's an aggregate of people, like they all one by one change their attitudes, generation by generation, they change their attitudes. So it's very slow. The good news is that the bad parts also are very slow, and usually people come to senses, but it takes forever. And it's very frustrating because at the end of the day, a lot of the things that we're hoping to make better, we may not see. And that is one of the most difficult parts about trying to make the world better, I guess, that you will probably not see the fruits of your labor, and that you have to make peace with it and like be forward thinking, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Very good. And tell me about your working dynamic in terms of working for clients and working with each other. How does that work? What do you both bring to the table?
Well,
That's
we
an
always
interesting
say
one.
Actually, how we introduce ourselves always is, hi, I'm Luis, and I lead with my heart.
And this is Hans, I lead with my brain. And that
Which
doesn't mean
Go.
That doesn't mean, let's do it again. Now you can like, hello, my name is Hans and I lead with my brain.
And I am Luis and I lead with my heart, which doesn't
mean that he's stupid or that I am cold. It just means that we look at the world from different perspectives.
But you know that we came to terms with that because obviously we have different ways to solve problems, to tackle strategies or whatever it is. But we understood how important it is, both sides of the story.
Yes.
To the brain part, the heart part, and they're both really important. And I think that what we manage is to not even understand how they both are very important, but to merge them and to trust each other. I think that was the key with us, to trust that it was going to work, and that sometimes you lead more into one side or more into the other one, but you always need both to be successful.
Yeah. Beautiful. So we've got a few more minutes. I'd love to know what you're working on at the moment and where people can find you as well.
Well, right now we're working on what we call the brand therapy. That's what we call it. And the idea is that the brand is storytelling, but brand is a decision-making tool. And that's how we approach it. Because, people will go to an agency and get a logo, and that is not the point. Like the story that you need to tell, no, this is important. You're not the only one who needs to tell the story. You need to tell the story, and then you need to give your clients, your employees, your supporters, your investors, whoever it is, the tools to tell it too, because they want to.
Yes.
Like a lot of people don't really see that. They want to share the story. When people are like, oh, those weird kids doing dances on TikTok. Yes, and you want that too. It's just that your medium may not be dances. But they want to talk about you. They're excited about the work. So you need to give them the tools. So when we say like brand this, how do you talk about yourself in a way that makes it easy? It becomes a tool for everyone else to talk about you in the way that you want to be talked about. The way we approach this and how we work is we're going to buy one, get one model, if you will. Because what we want to do, the people who need the most, everyone needs this. But CEOs can pay for it. So we charge them. But nonprofits, particularly nonprofits, educators, activists, and artists, they can't. They cannot afford it. They don't see it as a priority necessarily. And they struggle because they are so passionate about what they do. So there's this fire, which is great to work with. I love working with someone who is excited, but they can afford it. So what we do is, that's why we're a nonprofit. We charge the people who can pay it so that we can do it for people who cannot, because these nonprofits need to communicate with the world the great work that they're doing. And they really struggle. It's very hard. And you know what? If you want to see how a problem needs to be solved, you don't need to go to talk to some executive at some whatever level. Talk to the person who is solving it on the ground, the person who is actually distributing the meals. This person will tell you a lot that is very hard to see. So these people need to be able to convey what they're doing, because otherwise they'll tell you it's a very different thing to be giving away meals to people who need it. That's wonderful. It's a very different thing than to be solving systemic issues that lead to this happening. And a lot of the time we confuse the two things, and we're not telling, oh, no. This is, of course, we do this because this is the humane part of it, but we're doing all of these other things to really tackle the problem at its origin. And they need to be able to tell the story. And many times it's very hard for them, because you know what the problem happens to us? Like our storytelling about ourselves is not great, because you are so close. When you try to read from so close, you cannot see, you cannot read. Same thing happens to everyone. So we try to get people to distance themselves from what they're doing. And you need a third party from that. So hopefully we can be the third party.
Yeah.
And you can find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and SundayAfternoonProject.com.
Beautiful. Thank you. Anything finally from you, Lewis, as well?
Well, I guess that for everybody here that is listening, and for you, storytelling is a must. For me, it's like breathing air. We live by stories. We get inspired. We get upset. We cry. We have fun. Like it's everything. It's like we're all storytellers in a certain way, I guess, or a shape or form. And yeah, stories are here to stay, and let's enjoy them. Let's share them, and let's inspire people.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, thank you both for the conversation. It's been lovely having you.
Well, thank you. Nice. Really appreciate you listening.
Yeah.
Well, that's the end of another episode. I hope you've enjoyed our conversation today. And I want to thank Louie and Han for sharing their story. Their journey reminds us that every time we silence or shrink ourselves, a little bit of our vitality fades. And that storytelling, when it's at its best, can help us to reclaim it. When we stop code switching, when we stop dividing our energy between who we are and what we think we need to be, we find wholeness, freedom, creativity, and the courage to lead. You can find more about Louie and Han's work at SundayAfternoonProject.org. Until next time, take good care, and don't forget to subscribe for more episodes of Sacred Stories of the Spirit wherever you watch or listen to your podcasts. See you next time.